Hey guys, in today's video, we're going to talk about how to fix your slide and add rotation. All right guys, so let's talk about how to fix your slide and add rotation. Before we dive in, I want to make sure you're aware of CogornoGolf.com. That is where we do all of our coaching. A lot of you guys ask, where can I send my swing in? How do I work with you, Eric? And the answer is at CogornoGolf.com. As a member, you get access to everything. Within the site, you get access to the member library, the practice section, the quick fix section, and most importantly, you get into our Facebook group where you can post your video and I myself will give you feedback on your most important priorities, show you how to improve those and track your progress over time. We'll put a link in the description down below, again, CogornoGolf.com. Now, how do we fix our slide and add rotation? There's a couple feels here that I want to go over to fix your slide and add rotation. And this is specifically for people, those of you who know who you are that are watching, who have too much what we would call slide during the downswing or too much lateral motion. Now, we could debate what is a slide, what's not a slide. That's not the point of this. The point is going to be if you've struggled with what you would consider too much lateral, maybe that causes some issues, and you want to fix it, what are the feels? There's two big ones to get into. Just briefly, even though I just said this is not a big deal, for those who aren't aware sort of how do you define a slide or what would that cause, if I took my normal setup position and I put a stick, so I have a little alignment right here, just outside the edge of my left foot, you see that creates a little bit of a space between my left hip and the shaft there. We've done some videos in the past about how to use your hips during the downswing, follow through things, etc. What I would consider too much slide would be if your left hip goes past the wall without a lot of turn. So if you bump this with your left hip, if your sort of left hip joint gets outside of your left ankle, that's what some people would consider too much slide. This is normally a higher level player issue. If you're someone who has contact issues, pushes and hooks, off-center contact, things like that, too much slide, usually you get too far under plane, you get hook patterns if this is you. What we would want to see from here is that there's rotation and a shift, but the goal is to get to that stick with your belt buckle, not with your left hip. That's sort of what we're talking about here. So what are the feels? There's really two of them as you go. And I saw Jeff Smith on Instagram, Radar Golf Pro, talk about this a couple weeks ago. And I really like how he described it, and I want to sort of explain that to you. When you go back, let's say you take your normal setup position, your hips are relatively level. When you make a backswing and you go up to the top, your left hip should be lower than your right hip, or said differently, your right hip in space should be higher than your left hip. The goal here to create rotation during your downswing and limit the slide is to maintain that relationship in early transition. Meaning, if I go up to the top, my left hip's lower than my right hip's higher than my left, I want to, in early transition, keep my left hip lower than my right. Okay, you get that? Right hip's higher, left hip is lower. So that would be feel number one. As you begin your transition, left hip stays lower as it turns back behind you. I'll go ahead and demonstrate one like that. I like to feel that with just a little kind of half one. Feel like the left hip stays lower in early transition. So I keep that hip inside my ankle and turn. Again, there's gonna be some shift still. I just wanna limit left hip lower as I start down. And in the beginning, I'm just doing some little half ones. If you're someone who slides too much, it's gonna feel like almost pure turn, like there's no slide at all. Of course, the goal is always gonna be to get to the wall with the belt buckle. So there will be some lateral, but if you're someone, whoever does that, you wanna feel like your left hip goes down and back as you're doing that, right? So left hip down and back to start your downswing pattern, a little half one. Good, and that's gonna add the rotation and get rid of the slide. Now, the second way to feel this is just the right hip, right? So I can feel, hey, my left hip's gonna stay lower than my right as I rotate. I can also just feel that my right hip is gonna stay higher than my left. For me, when I do that, I feel like my right hip actually goes up. I almost go on my toes a little bit, like I'm creating like almost an excessive amount of right side bend here with my left hip lower, like I'm doing a right side crunch. That would be feel number two, up to the top. Right hip's higher than my left. I feel like I actually raise my right hip in transition would be the second piece to not slide. Let's go ahead and do that. Right hip high as I start down. And that's another way to add some rotation, limit slide. For those of you who slide, usually if you look at your hips, you're gonna go this way. Your left hip's gonna go high and your right hip's gonna go low. So as with anything else, you have to feel opposites. If you have left hip high when you slide, you need to feel left hip low. If you have right hip low when you slide, you need to feel right hip high. It's just the opposites of normal. You can practice this and give yourself feedback, and what Jeff did in the video, and I've seen many people do, is you put the little alignment rod in your belt loops, like so, and this represents sort of the tilt, right, or the angle of your hips. Make sure the right edge isn't past your hip, you don't hit yourself. When you make a backswing, your left hip's gonna be lower than your right hip. You see how that's angled there. And then in transition, I wanna maintain that lower. See that? So my feel is, it's lower going back. I wanna maintain it lower, and see how it's going back behind me as I start my downswing. That's my feel. Now that should look like no lateral motion, because you're someone who has too much. It needs to look like nothing, so you have the right amount. That's the key. So one more time, sticks lower. It stays lower and goes behind me. Right hip stays higher, and you could hit some with this in, and just start with little short ones. So you can feel what that rotation feels like. And that's a really good visual, and I would record yourself, right? Set up the live view or the video, and so you can actually see where this is. And I go back, left hip lower, right hip's higher, left hip stays lower, right hip stays higher. And see, I can see that blue stick going back and behind me. I feel a little bit of sort of a right crunch there as I start that. I'll go ahead and do one more. Good, so those feel really good. So that's the key to this, guys. If you have too much slide, that is definitely fixable. Now, you might have to look and see if there's reasons earlier that are causing it, but too much slide is left hip to the wall. You wanna get belt buckle to the wall. When you slide too much, your left hip's gonna go up, right hip lower. You need to feel opposites. Left hip lower and back, right hip sort of up and forward. Use this stick for feedback, but ultimately the king of the hill is video. If you guys ever need assistance, would love to help you guys on CogornoGolf.com. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. Hey guys, thanks for watching today's video. If you liked the video, do us a favor, click the like button down below. Click the notification bell. Also, please subscribe if you haven't. Another reminder, every Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are live here on YouTube for Rapid Fire Golf. Would love to see you guys there. Thanks.